again this weekend at Base Camp in Founders in a hidden room upstairs. Well, joining us now, our good friend Kevin DeVries at Base Camp and Grace Explorations, and Dave Vermilia, going to be our guest speaker this weekend. This is going to be another great time to come together, and probably a great time to do it because you can escape, get into the air conditioning, and enjoy a little time together to talk about some things that you probably don't get a lot of time to focus on. Kevin, this week going to be another special one, huh?
Yeah, we've invited Dave to come and speak, and Dave is a great guy. He's a soft-spoken type, so he's not one that necessarily seeks out radio interviews or those type of platforms. But after hiking with him and just watching him for the last couple of years, he's just had a tremendous impact on a number of individuals. And when I find someone who has a change agent effect impact on other people's lives, I'm always curious as to what their journey was, because typically I find that people who care about other people have also had to address their own pain. There's something inside of them that creates that empathy. So if you dig a little bit, you'll find an incredible story, and Dave is certainly no exception to that. Just these deep streams that run quiet and deep in a man's heart, and he's overcome a lot of things, and I think he has something to not only help at-risk youth and on trips to Montana, but also some men here in West Michigan. So we're excited to have him come this Sunday night.
So Dave, what is your story, and what are folks geared up to hear when it comes to when we get together at Founders this Sunday?
Well, first of all, given my stage in life, my story is long. And so it'll be a matter of figuring out what not to share. But ultimately, if I titled the story, I would title it From Broken Glass to Stained Glass. And just looking at how God takes the brokenness in our lives and turns it into something beautiful. So when I think about my story, it includes, a lot of just aspects to it that were a challenge growing up, from abandonment to 3 divorces as a kid, abuse, those types of things. But ultimately, where I really want to drive the conversation is just in terms of what God does with all that stuff and how that stuff is what made me who I am. And so I'm at a point in my life where I never want somebody to feel sorry for all of the things that I've gone through. The things that I've gone through truly have formed me, and God has used all of those things to, create the person that I am and to bless me in ways that are almost impossible to count.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I think in my life, in some ways, that this unique perspective. And I always talk about like Steve Jobs, and he would, in that famous commencement speech at Stanford, he would talk about how if you look back, the dots will connect. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, you've got a very beautiful way of putting that with the stained glass, of taking those pieces that are, they're every bit, every one of them is different pieces in your life, and but they all come together to form. If you want to get
stop that phone, it never rings.
That's okay. Hey, that may be Jesus. We don't know.
You never know.
Yeah, you don't know who's calling. I mean, at any point in time. That's okay. That's hey. What happens when you're live on the radio like this?
Okay. I'm one of those few people that still has a landline, and I keep wondering why.
No, that's okay.
Now you know.
Yeah, we got to answer the call, Dave. So
that's right.
So yeah, but I think that's a powerful way to look at it, and especially if you can have that perspective to look back and look at it that way. How did you get to that point?
I think it's been a journey, getting there. And I would say that a big part of that journey actually started with my wife. Very, very, very fortunate for the wife that God gave me that helped me to start looking at some of the things in my past and actually coming to terms with some of that, and even helping me to get past that point where it was in our early days of wanting to blame my past for my present, and just challenging me in ways of like looking at, no, I'm responsible for what I do with this. What happened to me in the past is in the past. It does inform who I am, but it doesn't have to control who I am. And so Beth has really helped me in that journey, and just coming alongside and loving me in spite of all of the stuff that I brought with me into the marriage. So I think that was a part of it. And then there's been numbers of times in my life where I've been asked to share bits and pieces of my story, and I just realized how quickly people could feel sorry for me. And I was like, no, that's not the point of this. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I want people to truly see what God does, and that transformation. And so it's been a journey, getting there. It's hard to say that there's a specific point in time, but definitely been a journey of God revealing himself to me, and me just seeing that, it's all about redemption. When we look at the scriptures, it's all about redemption and God's work. And so I'm no different than anyone else.
Tell me how he'll just like put certain people in your life to to just the right time to make those things happen, and maybe those relationships and to help you sort of realize some of those things that happen. Some people will say, hey, your message, or these things that happen are like lessons. But it's one thing to be on the other side of it and say that, because I've seen that stuff happen in my life too. But how do you explain that to somebody that's going through it right now? Because maybe they're in the middle of something, a season, or a certain particular painful thing that's just really, it's hard to see through that thing, and it's almost like you're looking through stained glass right up close. You can't necessarily tell. You have to take a step back. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. I would say that part of my journey has actually been walking alongside others. But that started years ago when I first moved to Grand Rapids. I got a job working with young men at Pine Rest, and then from there into some other organizations that were doing residential treatment with young men. And having them, in the midst of their mess saying, you don't understand, you just don't get it. And I'm like, well, let's talk, because I might. And then began just noticing a window into other people's souls through my story. Mm-hmm. And ironically, I think I got a lot of therapy by proxy in working in those organizations and helping others walk through their mess, and at the same time was actually walking through my own and putting some pieces together. If I look back at like who are those people in my lives, there are a few people that I can look back on and say, okay, they had a huge impact. And last weekend, I was back in Ohio and actually got to spend some time with a guy who was responsible for actually getting me into church when I was in 8th grade, and engaged himself with my family and just kind of invited us into their lives. And that made a huge difference in my trajectory, just getting involved in the church right at a time in life when, you need people around you. You need that youth group or a youth pastor or that. So there's been bits and pieces of people throughout my life that have had an impact and kind of directed me almost a little bit like the bumpers on a bowling alley, kind of keeping me in the lane.
Yeah, that's powerful. Base Camp is happening again this Sunday at Founders. And if you want to be a part of this and maybe see what this is all about, maybe you've heard about us talk about it on the radio, maybe you've been to one before, but you haven't been back to Founders yet. It's a great opportunity this weekend to come out. Kevin, tell us how it works and what folks can expect to see.
Yeah, so we're just doing one session to fill the room up, and so it will sell out just like we did last month. So it's a 5 o'clock session. Just go to Grace Explorations, that's plural with an S.com, or you can find us direct on Eventbrite. I did want to mention in reference to Dave's story, the thing that I really like about him and about his story is, first of all, the most vulnerable people that we have in our society are children. Many of them don't have a voice. They don't have an opinion. They don't have some of the things that we enjoy as adults. So when you find a man who has this incredibly painful journey through his childhood, it would have been very easy for him to take the clinical term victim, which would have been appropriate in that circumstance, and apply that to the rest of his life, which would then become victimization or a victim mentality. And the thing that I like about Dave is He's like, look, I'm not telling this story to get pity. I'm telling this story to empower you. I'm telling you this story to show you that there is a way to not only collect the dots, but connect them. And he's already made reference to it, but the way that he connected those dots was in communities. So our mantra is change happens in communities. So when a crisis comes, regardless of what stage of life you're in, allow that crisis to initiate you and introduce you into a Christ-centered community, because those are the three change agents: a crisis in your life, the person of Christ, and particularly a Christ-centered community can create this empowerment where you're not a powerless victim for the rest of your life. You're not denying the fact that harmful, difficult things have happened, some of which have legal ramifications, but you're also saying, you know what, I can transcend that. Maybe legally and clinically I was a victim, but I don't have to embrace and immerse myself in a victim mentality. I can take responsibility. And I love the way Dave said that, don't allow your past to imprison your future. Well said. And I encourage guys to come out. Here's a sage. This guy has been there, done that. He's got decades of experience under his belt. He reminds me in some ways of Robin Williams' character in Good Will Hunting. You get these guys that are just full of angst and another word I won't say online, and vinegar, right? And they come to him and they're like, you don't understand. You'll never get what I'm going through. And he's like, maybe, let's talk. Maybe part of my story can identify with yours. It's wise for us to sit at the feet of someone who has that empathy and that deep well of compassion. And regardless of what age you are, I just ask the men to come and be a part of a great evening at Founders this Sunday night at 5 p.m.
Yeah, it's going to be another good one, and we can't wait to see you there, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing just a little bit of your story, and then ultimately more of it this Sunday, and opening up for folks who are, I'm sure we're going to find little bits and pieces of their own and yours as well. Thanks for sharing that stained glass with us. We appreciate it, because I think when most of us are going through this life, no matter what it looks like, it may look like a real mess up close and personal, but when you step back, you never know that masterpiece God might be working on the other side.
Absolutely.
Amen.
This Sunday, base camp at Founders, and of course, all the details online. We'll put those in the show notes as well. Make sure you join us there. We'd love to see you. Thank you, gents. Appreciate you being here with us today.
Thanks
so much.